Today I want to talk about the top 5 questions people have about divorce. I wanted to get a sense of what these questions are, these topics. These are the most popular questions we usually get about divorce and how divorce works and the whole world of a divorce, potential divorce, considering divorce. So the first question is, how do I file for divorce? That's the first one we usually get. How do you get something filed? How do you start a divorce is another way to say it. So filing for divorce is going to involve the county where you live. So like in Michigan, it involves the county where you live. That's where I practice divorce family law. And it depends from there on the county, but most of them are still in-person filing. So you fill out paperwork, you take it to the court clerk's office, you have them file it, you pay a filing fee, they stamp the documents, your copy of them, hand them back to you. Just like it's been for years and years. There was a while there, pandemic, a little bit after pandemic, where some of them went to electronic filing, or some of them have a hybrid sort of system. But there are counties where you file it in person to start it, but then it switches to electronic filing going forward, e-file system from there. Oakland County is one of those. There are many in the state of Michigan that are like that, but they're pretty much all designed the same way, where you initially are going to file at the courthouse in person with paper. So that's how you start a divorce. You fill out a divorce complaint. You need a summons. In some counties, the clerk hands you the summons, and others you prepare your own summons. Whatever court orders you're going to do, whatever forms are required, depending on whether you have children, minor children, or you don't have children, is going to be different paperwork required with those restrictions, requirements, what you got to do. So you can look into some of that, do some searching. You could also meet with a divorce attorney. It doesn't mean you have to hire them. But it would be helpful to get advice, whether you're trying to do this on your own or think about hiring someone, or maybe somewhere in between. But that's basically the short version of how you would start a divorce. And then you go from there. Second question we typically get is, what are the legal requirements for getting a divorce? So what's required legally for you to file for divorce? Well, you need jurisdiction, so you have to be so in Michigan, the requirements are, the residency requirement is you have to have lived in the state of Michigan for at least 6 months consecutively. So the last 180 days prior to filing, you have to be a resident of Michigan. So that's where you live, it's where you vote, where you pay taxes, all that kind of stuff. And then you have to be a resident of the county. So wherever you live, what county you're in, you have to be a resident there for at least 10 days to file for divorce, because you have to file in the county where you live. Now, if you and your spouse are living separately and you're in different states or different counties, that's kind of a whole another discussion. But your guiding light, your line through is going to be, assume that you file in the county where you live, in the state where you live, and that's how that's going to look. And it gets filed in the circuit court, which in Michigan is, kind of the higher court. It's not local district court where you do traffic tickets and drunk drivings and that kind of stuff. It's circuit court where the felonies are, murder trials. It's going to be in that building. So it's the county court, the county circuit court is what they call it. So, but yeah, the requirements, legal requirements for getting a divorce, you have to be married, of course, and then I guess that's obvious. And then you need residency. You need the residency requirement. You need the jurisdictional requirements. You're not required to be a U.S. citizen, just so you know that, to put that out there. So being a resident is different than being a citizen. But a resident is where you live, where you call home, where you pay taxes, where you vote, and those sorts of things. So that's the second most popular question we get here with divorce out of the top 5 is what are the legal requirements for getting a divorce? And then the third most popular question we'll typically get with divorce is how is property divided during a divorce? So how's your property going to be divided? Whether it's real estate, retirement accounts, personal property like furniture and stuff, cars, bank accounts, debt, whatever it might be. That's not really property, but whatever property you might be dealing with, how is that going to be divided? So, the short answer in Michigan on how property is divided is, first of all, it's by agreement, but the guide to how you reach an agreement is going to be what the law is. You can assume it's half and half on things. It's kind of a 50-50 state. That's how Michigan law looks at this. Michigan is dual property. We're not community property. So we're dual property, dual meaning two. You got 2 categories, marital property and separate property. So you're dividing up marital property as in things you acquired during the marriage, things you bought, whether it was your money, your wife's money, or both, things that you've acquired, things that you've earned during the marriage, retirement accounts, savings accounts, investment accounts, vehicles, real estate, whatever it might be. And those things will be then divided pretty much equally. It would be the assumption, depending on how long you've been married. So it's possible to have separate property, which would be property you owned before the marriage, or inheritance. So this whole discussion of how you divide property, the simple answer is you divide it up equally. But there's exceptions, is kind of how Michigan law looks at it. Exceptions being inheritance or separate property, which would be something you owned prior to the marriage. Inheritance being a type of separate property, premarital property being a type of separate property. But in general, you're dividing it more or less equally, more or less equitably, as the word that the law uses, meaning whatever is going to be fair. So that's, our number 3 on our list of what's the top 5 questions people have about divorce. Number 4 is how is child custody determined in a divorce? So this is a big one. It's its own. You could have an hour discussion about how child custody is determined, but the short answer, of course, hopefully it's by agreement, but if it's not by agreement, the court is going to be looking at what's called the best interest of the child factors. There's these 12 factors they look at to determine who should have custody of children in a divorce, or a custody case. If you're not married, a custody case. So how custody is determined, it's based on the 12 factors. They're looking at what's best interest of the child. Who does the child look to for primary care? Who are they supported by? Who are they emotionally supported, financially supported by? What's been the history? Who do they typically stay with now? What's the schedule now, if there's any sort of routine in place? And they're looking at all these different factors for determining custody. And then number 5, the top 5 questions people ask about divorce is how long does the divorce process take? So there are waiting periods. If you have no minor children, there's a 60-day waiting period, so 2 months. If there are minor children, there's a 6-month waiting period, or 180 days. So a divorce case, children, no children, is going to be, you can be done a little shorter than 6 months if there's exceptions and you have children. So you might call it, 4 or 5 months in, you possibly have an agreement on everything, could convince a judge to make an exception and allow you to get divorced before the 6-month waiting period with minor children. But in general, a divorce case is going to be 5 to 8 months total time frame, depending on the county, depending on the issues. When you have minor children, without minor children, a divorce could be, 2 to 6 months as a total time frame, beginning to end. So they vary somewhere. They can be done in as short as a couple months. There's no way to be divorced in less than 60 days. That's not allowed by state law in Michigan, but they can be as little as 2 months. They can be as long as 8 months. They can even end up going almost into a year. Beyond a year is really sort of unheard of, depending on the county. There's a lot of reasons why that really cannot happen anymore, but they're like a 2 to 8 month process is realistic. Without minor children, they can be more like 2 to 5, depending on the difficulty level and also how that all looks. So, hopefully that helps.